Welcome to the Leadership Institute's presentation on Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals. Saul Alinsky is the founder of modern community organizing, and he had a huge impact on the modern progressive movement. Influenced by the labor movement, he took the techniques and strategies of union organizing and turned them to organizing communities at large for social change. He was the subject of a thesis by Hillary Clinton, and one community organizer that followed in his footsteps is President Barack Obama. Now, it's important to note we don't condone what Alinsky did. When we say organize communities, we don't mean getting people to obtain welfare from the state. We don't mean expanding government. We don't mean militantly opposing any businesses or institutions that did not agree completely with the progressive program. Rather than community organizing, we can say he was really creating more dependence. There's also a question of ethics. There's no coincidence that there's a dedication in Rules for Radicals to Lucifer. Alinsky was a moral relativist who believed that noble ideals are only propaganda to disguise self-interest. He believes in the politics of personal destruction. He attacks the character, morality, and private lives of opponents, not just their ideas. For Alinsky, politics is not about pursuing the common good of the country, but destroying your ideological opponents. Nonetheless, most political technology is philosophically neutral. Conservatives, while living up to our own moral standards, have much to learn from Alinsky. At the same time, by even being aware of these rules, you will be able to counter them if they are used against you. With that in mind, we hope you enjoyed this presentation.
Saul Alinsky's first rule is power is not only what you have, but what the enemy thinks you have. In short, perception is reality. Would you believe that a small group of students shaped the media coverage of the Supreme Court decision that ended Washington, D.C.'s ban on guns? On the morning the decision was to be announced, 15 conservative student activists gathered at the Supreme Court to rally for gun rights. The group was stunned to find they were the only ones rallying in favor of the Second Amendment. Their signs, posters, and enthusiasm drew the attention of the media. They held handmade signs that read, "Legalize the Constitution," and "If guns kill people, do pens misspell words?" These were magnets for photographers and television stations which overpowered the professional anti-gun lobby. The next day's news coverage wasn't dominated by the radical left ranting for more gun control. It was just the opposite. Young, engaged, conservative students who became the poster children for gun rights in America. Their images appeared on the front pages of dozens of newspapers, including the Washington Post, the Los Angeles Times, and USA Today. The earned media by this small group highlights the spirit of Alinsky's first rule, that power is not only what you have, but what the enemy thinks you have. So for all the student activists out there, remember that a small group of highly effective students can become a powerful force for liberty.
Alinsky's rule number 2 is never go outside the expertise of your people. Your organization's success depends on the experience that your members have. If your people have practiced a certain kind of activism, they'll be able to do that kind of activism again in the future. However, don't follow this rule in all situations. You're never going to develop your people into effective activists unless you get them outside of their comfort zone. I was the leader of the Texas Aggie Conservatives group at Texas A&M. A year before I started the group, I protested Michael Moore in Washington, D.C. using street theater. I wanted my group to use the same tactic to protest socialism. However, when I made this suggestion at our first meeting, no one felt comfortable doing it. They looked at me like I was crazy. We participated in a few events by making signs and organized rallies, but we didn't try any street theater for any event the first year. The following year, though, I managed to get everyone to dress up and protest socialized medicine during President Obama's visit to our campus. Our group loved it. We got on MSNBC, we were featured in the New York Times, and our group had overcome its initial fear of street theater. And with such a positive impact on our first attempt, it became standard activism for our group. Alinsky says, when an action or tactic is outside the experience of the people, the result is confusion, fear, and retreat. Use minor political battles to teach your people new forms of activism. It gives them the training they need to succeed when the stakes are high.
Saul Alinsky's third rule for radicals: whenever possible, go outside the expertise of the enemy. Conservative student activists have embraced new media to expose the campus left. One key example is the student from Gustavus Adolphus College who recorded a series of skits presented by student leaders at freshman orientation. The skits featured the usual multicultural propaganda. Students were taught important lessons like the beauty of atheism, how to be tolerant towards the pansexual community, and other explicit topics. the videos went viral, getting 44,000 views on YouTube alone. National media outlets like WorldNet Daily and National Review picked up on the story and put pressure on the school. The situation reached a boiling point, and the dean of the college was forced to respond. The administration hosted an open forum discussing the content of the orientation and ultimately had to make revisions to the program. Conservatives have been much more effective at catching their opponents saying something ridiculous than the left. The left is the system on campus, and they struggle when conservatives hold them accountable. Gustavus Adolphus College assumed that every member of the freshman class was liberal. It didn't occur to the university that some students would fight back. Remember, the left on campus is not expected to take action. By going outside of their experience, though, you can take back power on campus and enact the changes that you want to see.
Saul Alinsky's rule number 4 is make the enemy live up to its own book of rules. By obeying the letter of the law, if not the spirit of the law, you can expose the internal contradictions of their system and hopefully bring the whole thing crashing down. One good example of this was the action of James O'Keefe when he was editor of the conservative campus publication, the Rutgers Centurion. In 2005, there was a controversy on campus over, believe it or not, the names of some of the sandwiches on campus. LGBT groups were claiming that some of them were offensive and that they had the right to force the names to be changed. Of course, the rules of Rutgers University require that such complaints be taken seriously, and this was something that conservatives could take advantage of as well. In March of 2005, O'Keefe and other staffers from the Rutgers Centurion requested a meeting with Dining Services. They explained that as Irish Americans, they were deeply offended by the cereal Lucky Charms. After all, Lucky Charms would make you to believe that all Irish people are actually 3 feet tall and have red hair and possess an unhealthy obsession with rainbows and hoarding gold. The college actually had to take this complaint seriously and listen carefully to the Centurion staffers make these absurd arguments. The Centurion was also able to put the whole thing on tape and release it to the public. The result was that this kind of censorship in the name of political correctness could be openly criticized by the entire campus. By taking the school's rhetoric about forbidding offensive speech at its word, the Centurion was able to strike a blow against political correctness.
Alinsky's Rule 5, ridicule is man's most potent weapon. Humor is the best way to attack your opponent. As conservative college students know, the student bodies of most colleges aren't overwhelmingly liberal, but overwhelmingly apathetic and indifferent to politics. The left, that broad coalition of special interest groups ranging from Students for a Democratic Society, environmentalist coalitions to the college Democrats, have the ability to target any conservative group on campus that dares to challenge their power. That's why humor is such a powerful tool. When the average student laughs at your opposition instead of listening to them, it diminishes their credibility among the student body. One of the best ways to introduce humor is by using street theater to get your point across. On Halloween at Washington State University, conservative students dressed up as the Grim Reaper and made a graveyard of constitutionally guaranteed freedoms that are slipping away. At Utah State University, the administration wanted to mandate a green fee for all students. In response, conservative students dressed up in police uniforms and went around campus as green police, passing out fake citations to students and faculty for violating green policy. Both of these events garnered local coverage from the news and allowed the conservative students an opportunity to air their views in a public forum. By thinking outside the box and introducing humor into the debate, conservative activists at these schools captured the attention of their fellow students. Remember, ridicule is man's most potent weapon. Find ways to make everyone laugh at your liberal opponents, and you will illustrate how ridiculous their views really are.
Alinsky's rule number 6. A good tactic is one your people will enjoy. A good protest is judged by the number of attendees and the intensity of your crowd. The media is not going to follow a conservative protest when it's just you out there. You need a crowd of active students to raise the attention of the media and the administration. When the University of Kentucky implemented a smoking ban on campus, the college conservatives came together to find out how we were going to fight the ban. Ideas brought up were writing campaigns, meeting with the administration, and posting flyers. These were good ideas, but we needed something that would bring the students and catch the attention of the administration. One student mentioned we should hold a protest for smokers to meet and smoke together to show support against the ban. We spread the word and the interest of the event was overwhelming. Over 100 students and faculty came out to protest and chant against the ban. This was the best attended event we have had on campus. The event was covered in the campus paper, local media, and mentioned in Time magazine. The smokeout was a success because students enjoyed protesting. The event was so successful, students were so excited that they were already planning a second protest before the first one was even finished.
Saul Alinsky's seventh rule is, a tactic that drags on too long becomes a drag. Everyone knows universities and professors tend to be liberal, with a few exceptions. It has been that way for years on almost every college campus across the country. Liberal colleges and liberal professors are old news. It's simply not enough to say, my school is liberal, or my professor grades me unfairly because I'm a conservative. You need to prove it and make it newsworthy. For example, students at Louisiana State University complain that their astronomy professor consistently brought his personal politics into the classroom. Old news. How do the students make it newsworthy? They videotaped the ranting professor in class, during which time he told students who advocated for no governmental action in response to global warming, blood will be on your hands, that their opinion was stupid, wrong, and like an ostrich hiding in the sand, and also that global warming dwarfs 9/11. The students released the video footage and caused quite a stir. LSU alumni and concerned members of the community were morally outraged. The story made Fox News and put a bad light on LSU for defending a professor that mocked, belittled, and attacked conservative students. The students at LSU took a widely accepted old news story and made it newsworthy. We know your universities and professors lean to the left. Don't just whine about it, prove it, and get it in the news.
Saul Alinsky's rule number 8, keep the pressure on, is great advice for anyone fighting the liberal establishment on their campus. Since the 60s, far-left activists have used this tactic to constantly keep their conservative opponents on the defensive. Now, conservatives are learning to take back ground by employing the same tactics that keep the pressure on the radical left. A recent example of conservatives using Alinsky's rule number 8 occurred at Clarion University in March 2011. The faculty union at Clarion University, known as APSCUF, hosted a rally to protest Pennsylvania Governor Tom Corbett's proposed budget cuts to higher education. Professors encouraged students to attend to express their discontent with the cuts. Union leaders called the budget devastating, arguing they would have no choice but to raise tuition and cut programs and faculty. What APSCUF and Clarion University professors didn't expect was that the Clarion College conservatives would show up in support of Corbett's proposed budget. Conservative students carried signs saying "trim the fat" and "which professor told you to be here?" Left-wing faculty and rally organizers were furious that students would dare to challenge the liberal mantra of more spending and more programs. Union President Anita Lair, who is also advisor to another group, the College Republicans, spoke out at the protest against the budget cuts. Seeing Lair's criticism of a Republican governor, the college conservatives immediately called for her resignation from the college Republicans. And the conservative students didn't stop there. They reached out to local Tea Party activists to continue to place the heat on liberal Republicans like Lair, who condemned the proposed cuts. To keep the pressure on, the college conservatives later hosted an informational seminar about the budget on campus. Policy experts from the Commonwealth Foundation educated students on the truth about Pennsylvania's budget, something they were not hearing from most of their professors. By following Alinsky's Rule 8, the college conservatives were able to gain fresh support for their fight against liberal policies.
Saul Alinsky's rule number 9. The threat is usually more terrifying than the thing itself. The top priority of any liberal administration is to prevent any kind of controversy on campus. Because liberals possess all the power, what this really means is that their top priority is making sure that conservatives like you remain silent. Liberals are paranoid, maybe even too paranoid, about conservatives becoming active on campus. At the University of Virginia, a group of students wanted to start a nonpartisan conservative group called the Burke Society, after the English statesman and philosopher Edmund Burke. The school refused to recognize the group on the grounds that already there was a, quote, conservative group on campus, the College Republicans. Needless to say, there were many other progressive groups on campus besides the College Democrats. The students called the Leadership Institute for help. We got the Foundation for Individual Rights and Education involved, and in January of 2008, they sent a letter to the University of Virginia informing them of the students' absolute right to start a nonpartisan conservative group at a public university. Almost instantly, the school reversed its decision, and the Burke Society is now a very active group on campus. We can expect that the school was dreading the public scrutiny and conservative media criticism that they would have received if the case moved any further. They fear a nightmare scenario of a situation going viral, and conservative activists around the country mobilizing on your issue. This fear gives you power. Again, the threat is usually more terrifying than the thing itself.
Alinsky's rule number 10. The major premise for tactics is the development of operations that will maintain a constant pressure upon the opposition. Alinsky's 10th rule may be the most important as it incorporates all the other rules. Leftist abuse exists at every college, either from college professors, administration, or the funding of liberal student groups. This liberal bias will not end unless you, the conservative student, can keep the pressure on the opposition. We are aware of college Republicans, but one conservative group is not enough on any campus, no matter how big or small. College Republicans work to get Republicans elected in their respected area. The left has a plethora of groups ranging from college Democrats, Planned Parenthood, college ACLU, NAACP, Socialist Students Union. You will need more than just a college Republican group to fight the liberals on campus. Some examples of student groups that you can start are Students for Life, Young Americans for Liberty, Young Americans for Freedom, Concealed Carry on Campus, and the list goes on. Your job is to start a conservative group on campus and learn how to build your membership. Train your members the techniques of running an effective table or hosting an event by attending the Youth Leadership School. Bring the campus election workshop to win student government positions so that you can stop the funding of leftist student groups. Protest leftist abuse from the administration or liberal commencement speakers. Start a conservative one-on-one class so you can keep the message of conservatism in the classroom. It is up to you to start a conservative student group on campus to keep constant pressure upon the opposition on your campus.
Alinsky's Rule 11 states that if you push the negative hard enough, it will break through to its counterside. On April 14, 2009, we saw this rule demonstrated at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. Former Congressman Tom Tancredo was scheduled to speak on in-state tuition benefits for illegal immigrants. Tancredo's introduction was interrupted by rowdy protesters. They chanted against him and covered him with a sign in front of the classroom. He was forced to stop his speech several times. Then a brick was thrown through the window and landed just a few feet from the congressman. The event was abruptly ended and police rushed Tancredo out of the room. A conservative student filmed the event and posted it to YouTube. It drew almost 70,000 hits, and it was picked up immediately by mainstream media. The protest by the liberal students failed because the focus of the story went from students exposing an extreme speaker's view to left-wing extremists deny free speech. Anyone that watched the video was forced to sympathize with the congressman and the conservative students. Even the head of the ACLU in North Carolina said that the incident was chilling and de facto censorship. UNC officials called Congressman Tancredo to apologize for the incident and paid for him to return to their campus. This event showcased the reality of left-wing hypocrisy and turned leftist extremism into a conservative victory.
Alinsky's 12th rule is, the price of a successful attack is a constructive alternative. You know your opponent's position is flawed, but if you're going to criticize their faults, you need to offer an alternative solution. Students at the University of Colorado Boulder used this rule when they changed how student fees were being spent on their campus. They were tired of seeing the fees go towards primarily leftist student groups. This happens all over the country, but at UC Boulder, the student government had one of the largest budgets in the country. Instead of just complaining about overspending or that the funds were not being distributed equally, the conservative students ran for positions in student government. Once elected, they could offer an alternative solution, cut the spending, and distribute the budget fairly among different student groups. And a majority of students agreed with the conservative candidates. They won an unprecedented 36 of 38 seats, cut the budget by $1 million, and defunded several leftist groups. Alinsky says, never let the enemy score points because you're caught without a solution to the problem. You need to offer an alternative if you want to succeed.
Saul Alinsky once said, I can't fight City Hall, but I can fight the mayor. Rule 13, pick the target, freeze it, personalize it, and polarize it. It shows you how you can make an abstract debate personal. You can force people to care about the issue and take action against your liberal opponents. One excellent example took place at the College of William & Mary. Gene Nickel was a star among campus liberals. He came to William & Mary with an activist agenda for progressive reform. Upon becoming the president of the nation's second oldest college, Nickel immediately moved to loosen admission standards, reward political allies, punish opponents, and even went so far as to remove a cross from the school's chapel on the grounds that it was offensive to non-Christians. The resistance to all of this was led by the Virginia Informer, a student newspaper that started with help from the Leadership Institute. Even though the paper had just started, they quickly moved to make the issue about Gene Nickel himself. First, they picked a target by focusing on how President Nickel had made the decision to remove the cross from the chapel. They also hosted debates on the issue and invited him to participate. When he gave excuses like, "I'm not in my office," they used investigative reporting to show that he in fact was just avoiding the questions. The pressure increased on Gene Nickel personally when he refused to answer questions and generally acted like he had something to hide. Second, conservatives froze the issue by focusing on how the cross might have cost the school donations. They were able to reveal that Nickel had in fact deceived his own staff by including a $12 million donation in a development report, even though that contribution had already been pulled as a direct result of Nickel's own activities. Finally, activists continually made the debate about Nickel personally. Nickel invited this to some extent by constantly seeking personal credit for anything positive that happened to the college. It follows then that he should have to take responsibility for the bad things that happened, such as lost donations or scandals. This was something Nickel was unable to do. He lashed out at professors who were critical of his decisions, he used deception to cover up mistakes, cursed out local residents who questioned him, and essentially trying to turn himself into a martyr. Conservatives successfully polarized the issue after a lengthy campaign that started with the Virginia Informer, but ended with the support of the main campus paper and the Virginia State Legislature. Gene Nickel's contract was terminated. The far-left group Students for a Democratic Society, the supposed anti-system militants, occupied school buildings and vandalized statues in defense of the school's president. But it backfired. Nickel left the school in disgrace. If you want to win, you'll have to engage in conflict with political opponents. Pick who's responsible for the policies you oppose and go after them. Alinsky's rules were written to empower and radicalize the have-nots of society. They can teach you to build power on your campus, because on the college campus today, you are the radical.